Hi, I'm Jeanette Roche. This is Bridge City News. Here's a look at some of the stories we have lined up for you tonight. Prime Minister Mark Carney lays out what he calls an ambitious plan in a pre-budget speech in Ottawa. Plus, the fall session of the Alberta Legislature opens with the government planning to force striking teachers back to work. And for the first time in nearly 500 years, a British royal prays with the Pope.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Jeanette Roche.
Thanks for joining us. Some ominous words Wednesday evening from Prime Minister Mark Carney. In a televised speech to university students in Ottawa, Carney made it clear Canada's relationship with the United States is about to change dramatically.
This decades-long process of an ever closer economic relationship with the United States is now over. And as a consequence, many of our former strengths as a country, former strengths more particularly as our economy, strengths based on close ties to America, have become our vulnerabilities. And as a result of that, the jobs of workers in our industries most affected by the U.S. tariffs in autos and steel and lumber are under threat. And our businesses are holding back investments restrained by the pall of uncertainty that's hanging over all of us. Our relationship with the United States will never again be the same as it was. Our goal for Canada is to double our non-U.S. exports over the course of the next decade, generating more than $300 billion more in trade, and that's new orders for Canadian resources, technologies, and expertise. The upcoming budget will balance the operating deficit in 3 years by reducing wasteful government spending and doing more with less. So the fact is that federal spending has been growing over the course of the last decade by more than 7% year over year. We've been spending faster than our economy was growing. So we have to change that, and our government is changing that.
Carney also framed his government's upcoming budget as one that will spur unprecedented levels of private sector investment and unleash a building spree. His fiscal plan will be tabled on November 4th. As you can expect, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre didn't think much of Carney's address. Poilievre says it's ironic that Carney talks of doubling Canada's non-U.S. exports within a decade, while not yet addressing any of the liberal regulations or laws that have prevented that from already happening.
But instead of saying, given that things are so bad, we Liberals are going to reverse course on all of the policies of inflation, of blocking home building, of standing in the way of resource projects, instead of that, he asked young people to make more sacrifices. This was the sacrifice speech to Canadian youth. And he said it's going to take lots of time to reverse all the damage. Mr. Carney, our youth have sacrificed enough. All they have done for the last 10 years is sacrifice. They are living in their parents' basement well into their 30s. Their rent has roughly doubled, and in fact, the most recent inflation data says that it's up another 4%. The purchasing power of their paychecks are down. More of their money goes to taxes than into food, clothing, and shelter combined. They are no longer safe on their streets after Liberal bail has unleashed crime and chaos everywhere.
The federal government introduced legislation with tougher bail and sentencing rules today. Justice Minister Sean Fraser says the legislation would make bail more difficult to get for violent and organized crime offences.
We heard directly from police organizations and from provincial governments in particular that reverse onuses should be introduced at bail for certain serious crimes. In most bail hearings, prosecutors must demonstrate a person should be detained before a court denies them bail. A reverse onus flips that rule, meaning the accused must convince the court that they should be released. This bill adds new reverse onus provisions for certain serious offences, including things like home invasion, auto theft, human smuggling and human trafficking, violent extortion, certain instances of assault and sexual assaults, and repeat violent crime with a weapon. We are also imposing a reverse onus on someone who has been convicted of crime and is awaiting sentencing. We have seen, sadly, tragedies play out in this country, including crimes committed by people who have been found guilty, but who are not yet incarcerated.
This new law would also allow for consecutive sentences for violent and repeat offenders, so multiple sentences could not be served at the same time. The fall session of the 31st Alberta Legislature opened on Thursday with the speech from the throne. But prior to the speech, new members were officially introduced, one of those being the leader of the official opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honour of presenting to you Mr. Naheed K. Nenshi, the new member for Edmonton Strathcona, who has taken the oath as a member of this Assembly, has inscribed the rolls, and now is here to claim the right to take his seat.
Congratulations, honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
In the throne speech, Lieutenant Governor Selma Lakhani outlined the government's plans to introduce policies she says will strengthen healthcare, improve classrooms, protect freedoms, and advance nation-building projects. The government reaffirmed its pledge to defend and exercise its constitutional jurisdiction against federal overreach, while continuing to expand relations with the U.S. counterparts. Alberta plans to partner with First Nations and industry to build new pipelines to Canada's west coast and southeastern Ontario. Lakhani also spoke about Alberta's sovereignty and independence.
Sovereignty does not mean separation. Strength and self-determination do not have to mean national independence. And one can love this province with all their heart and love our nation just as much. In fact, it is your government's view that both Canada and Alberta can only succeed when a proper constitutional balance has been restored and Alberta is empowered to freely pursue its full potential, while Ottawa focuses its efforts on key areas of federal jurisdiction.
The government says after touring the province, the Alberta Next panel is now drafting a report with recommendations as to what initiatives are worth pursuing immediately to strengthen Alberta's sovereignty within Canada and which initiatives should be put to a referendum. But it says it will be Albertans who will ultimately make that choice. After the throne speech, Premier Danielle Smith announced the first piece of legislation to be introduced will be Bill 1, the International Agreements Act.
Ottawa can sign international agreements with other countries. That's their right. But this legislation, it makes it clear that those agreements will only become enforceable in Alberta if implemented under provincial legislation. Since the federal election, I've met with Prime Minister Mark Carney several times. I've told him the same thing every time, that Confederation works best when Ottawa respects the Constitution and provincial authority. And we have made our position clear. Work with us and we'll get things done. Overstep, and Alberta will stand its ground.
And as the fall session got underway inside the legislature, teachers rallied outside as their province-wide strike nears the end of its third week. It's been an anxious time for teachers and students as Premier Smith confirmed her government will table back to work legislation on Monday that seeks to end the province-wide teachers' strike. The government served formal notice Thursday that it would be introducing Bill 2, known as the Back to School Act. The two sides are deadlocked over wages and working conditions in a walkout that has left 750,000 students out of school. In a statement, NDP leader Naheed Nenshi calls the move, quote, an attack on teachers, on public education, on all workers and their unions, and on democracy itself. Here in Lethbridge, families seeking care for their children at Chinook Regional Hospital have recently started seeing a rolling cart moving through the hallways 5 days a week. It is the Comfort Cart from Ronald McDonald House, which brings hospitality and emotional support right to patients' bedsides. The initiative began a couple of weeks ago. The cart moves between the prenatal clinic, NICU, pediatric, maternity, child, labor, and delivery units, offering a variety of items designed to make hospital stays a little easier for families. Comfort items include snacks, coffee, reading materials, activity books, and hygiene products like toothbrushes.
We are incredibly honored to partner with the Chinook Regional Hospital Foundation. They've done incredible things for the community, and we are just lucky to be able to be part of this with them. We offer comfort carts at a few other locations across the province, in Red Deer, at Peter Lougheed Centre, and at Foothills Medical Centre. And now we have the opportunity to do that here in Lethbridge. We know that families have a wide variety of needs, and they want to stay close to their kids when they're in the hospital. So in order to help them stay close to their kids, we want to bring the comforts that they need to them. Our whole goal is to serve families what they need, and we know that they're going through the hardest times in their life, and we actually just want to make their lives easier. I'm told that the families are thrilled. They're actually shocked that these services are being provided and that they have the opportunity, and really grateful.
I've seen it in use in the hospital right now, and already our parents have mentioned multiple times that they really appreciate it. It's just a little pick-me-up that the hospital as well as Ronald McDonald House has been able to provide for them. Being a parent and in the similar situation, I can also vouch that even the little bit of kindness that's provided with a coffee or a snack when you've been in the hospital day is huge. You don't understand how big of a gesture it is until you're in that situation.
The foundation is built on relationships. This partnership with Ronald McDonald House to bring this comfort cart to families in our hospital is inspiring. The philanthropy of giving back when it's your turn and you're able to do so. And so it just is a beautiful cycle from volunteers, donors, the foundation helping to execute, the partner with Ronald McDonald House. It literally gives me goosebumps.
The operating costs of the comfort cart is estimated at about $10,000 a year. Across the country, it's reported that there's a shortage of doctors, and according to a study from the Fraser Institute, Canada ranks very low for access to same-day or next-day appointments with a physician. Nadim Ismail, Director of Health Policy with the Fraser Institute, blames Canada's restrictive policy on doctor training.
It comes down to some decisions that have been made a very long time ago in Canada about how many physicians are going to be trained and how government will be involved. In fact, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development looked at different countries around the world and discovered that countries that had taken a less managed approach to physician populations had more doctors than countries that, like Canada, had taken more of a government managed approach. We also have to remember that in the 1970s, Canada had one of the highest physician to population ratios in the developed world, but rising out of concerns in the 1980s and early 1990s about Canada potentially having a physician surplus, governments clamped down on physician training, and the result is now we're faced with a physician shortage.
Catch my full interview with Nadim Ismail from the Fraser Institute coming up later in the program. It was a somber day for the city of Lethbridge and member of the Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services. A funeral service was held for retired Fire Captain Mike Stevens at the Trade and Convention Center on Thursday. Stevens served with LFES from 1976 to 2011, being named lieutenant in 2004 and captain in 2007. Stevens passed away on October 6th at the age of 74 from cancer. He's remembered for being a humble leader and caring friend.
He was a mentor, a friend, a steady presence in the fire hall who truly cared about the profession. He loved the job. He loved the guys and the gals. He was one of the most intelligent men I'd ever worked with. His knowledge of the fire service was second to none, but he never made you feel small for not knowing something. Even in his retirement, Mike remained a cherished part of our fire family, and his line-of-duty death is a solemn reminder of the risks that our firefighters and paramedics face and the courage it takes to live a life of service.
Lethbridge Fire says his example and leadership continues to play a pivotal role in influencing their members today. When people feel unsafe, are threatened, or witness an attack, the key to safety is knowing how to react. With that in mind, and as part of the Week Without Violence, the Lethbridge YWCA hosted a bystander intervention training. Leah Webster, sexual and gender-based violence prevention coordinator and trainer from the University of Lethbridge, shares 5 key steps to help others stay safe.
We talk about the 5 Ds of being a bystander that intervenes. So those things are like being direct. So when we see something, we call it out. Delegating, so if we're not comfortable to step in, we're talking to somebody else that might be more comfortable to step in. Delaying, which is maybe we're not comfortable stepping in that moment, but we can connect with that person after and say like, how are you? Is there anything I can do to support you? Documenting, so again, if you're not the one fully stepping in and intervening, but you're documenting what's happening, who you saw, what you saw, if somebody else is also intervening. Distract, so intervening in that moment and causing a distraction or connecting with people to change what's happening in that moment and just making a distraction. If you don't feel comfortable because your safety's at risk or you just have a boundary about that, it's really important that you call somebody else because the only thing that's the bad thing to do in being a bystander is not doing anything. So for example, if there's a large group of people all witnessing the same event, sometimes people will assume that somebody else will step in. So being able to recognize that like it's okay to be the leader, it's okay to take charge in those situations and say, yeah, I'm gonna step in because other people will follow you.
The only way that domestic or sexual or gender-based violence is ever going to end is if we as a society make it stop. And that is by intervening, offering education or support about what we can do by calling it out, by intervening, and by demonstrating peaceful and healthy relationships in our own lives.
Canada's largest environmental charity just received a massive donation of grassland for permanent conservation. The Nature Conservancy of Canada, or NCC, received 507 hectares of property located in Lethbridge County along the Oldman River, downstream from Lethbridge. The land is one of the largest remaining contiguous tracts of intact prairie grasslands in the area. Native grasslands filter water, store carbon, and provide vital habitat for wildlife, including dozens of at-risk species, yet they are disappearing at an alarming rate. The donor, Diane Glover, shown here on the left, says the donation is deeply personal. She says the land, which has been in her family for 3 generations, will honor the memory of her parents, siblings, and grandparents. Spokesperson for the NCC, Sean Fagan, says the conserved land will provide a permanent home for prairie species.
Unfortunately, many of our prairie species are in decline. There was a report last month about the state of Canadian wildlife, and it concluded that prairie wildlife are the fastest declining groups in Canada, having declined by 62% since 1970. And this mirrors a report from last year, termed the State of Canada's Bird Report, and that also found that grassland birds are the fastest declining.
Contributions were also made by the Government of Canada through the Natural Heritage Conservation Program, part of Canada's Nature Fund. Donors and partners also helped, including Cenovus Energy as part of their Conserving Critical Wetlands program. There was a significant religious moment at the Vatican in Rome Thursday. King Charles prayed with Pope Leo XIV. The event marked the first time since the Reformation that the heads of 2 Christian churches have prayed together. The 2 churches have been divided for centuries over issues that now include the ordination of female priests. We get more from Nicole Winfield with the Associated Press.
This is the first time that a British monarch and a pope have prayed together in some 500 years. It's a difficult time, though, for the British royal family. They're coping with the ongoing fallout of the Epstein sex scandal and Prince Andrew's ties to the convicted sex offender. It's also a difficult moment for the Anglican Communion at large. It is threatened with schism over the appointment of the first ever woman as the Archbishop of Canterbury.
King Charles and Queen Camilla's visit had actually been planned for earlier this year, but was rescheduled after Pope Francis got sick and then passed away. There's a new development in the Canada Post dispute. The Canada Industrial Relations Board has ruled against the company's union and its challenge to Ottawa's move during the holiday season last year to force the postal workers back to the job. The Labour Board concluded the federal government did not violate the workers' right to strike under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms when it used a section of the Canada Labour Code, to direct the board to impose the back-to-work order. The 2 sides still have not reached a new contract, and workers are participating in rotating strikes. Canada's retail sales rose 1% to roughly $70 billion in August. Stats Canada says it was helped by gains in the auto sector as sales at motor vehicle and parts dealers rose 1.8%. Sales at new car dealers gained more than 2% for the month, while used car dealers rose 1.5%. West Fraser Timber reports higher losses in its third quarter than a year earlier. The Vancouver-based forestry company had a net loss of $204 million US, compared with $83 million during the same time last year. West Fraser CEO Sean McLaren says the company faces supply and demand imbalances in wood building products due to lower housing affordability. He says that the new US tariffs on Canadian softwood lumber create a challenging backdrop for the company. Some former Hudson's Bay employees have filed a class action lawsuit for a share of the defunct retailer's pension surplus. The former workers were enrolled in a pension plan by Simpson's, a rival department store that HBC bought back in the 1970s. The Simpson's pension plan had a surplus at the time HBC became its administrator. Any surplus stands to become a flashpoint in HBC's ongoing creditor protection case because lawyers doubt the retailer will be able to repay the $1.1 billion it owed creditors when it collapsed. Now here's a look at today's markets.
The TSX was up 203 to 30,186. The Dow was up 144 to 46,734. The S&P 500 was up 39 to 6,738, and the Nasdaq was up 201 to 22,941. West Texas Intermediate oil was up $3.28 to $61.78 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 16 cents to $3.29 US. Gold was up $25.40 to $41.2584 US an ounce, and silver was up 45 cents to $48.94 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $7.16 per bushel, barley is at $5.70, canola is at $14.06, and corn is at $7.29 per bushel. Live cattle were down 67 cents to $239.72. Feeder cattle were down $1.72 to $363.35, and lean hogs December contract was down 62 cents to $81.77. And the Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours and currently sits at $71.50 US.
Recapping one of our top stories, the Alberta government plans to force 51,000 striking teachers back to work. The fall session of the legislature opened Thursday, and the government says it will introduce the Back to School Act next Monday. The two sides are deadlocked over wages and working conditions in a walkout that has left 750,000 students out of school. In Lethbridge, across Alberta and throughout Canada, there are complaints of not being able to get in to see a doctor, not to mention the lack of available family doctors. There is a clear doctor shortage in Canada, and we'll be learning why from Nadim Ismail, Director of Health Policy from the Fraser Institute. Stay with us to hear some startling statistics revealed in their most recent study. Also, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. You can also visit our website or YouTube channel anytime to check out more of our stories and interviews.